Hey, good morning. It's been a while since I've actually done a video, and I'm doing this video because I was actually just writing in my journal and having a conversation with God. And as I was having this conversation, I started processing why, just for a little bit, like why am I not in church? Why don't I go to church? And the thought came to me, uncovered church trauma. There are people who I know who probably have been hurt by church, who would still show up to church. And for me, I don't know. I just have not been able to shake it. I've had various experiences with different churches, but more so like maybe one specific church um, has been the cause of my choosing to disconnect from going to church on a regular. And as I was thinking about it, it wasn't really the church that did it for me. It was actually a specific person. Some of you may know that I pastored for a little bit. I have a bachelor's in ministerial theology because I had felt called to the ministry and had chosen to go to church to go to school to answer that call. And when I went to school, I really battled with the call. A lot of women do, a lot of women in ministry do. We question, God, am I really called? Am I really called? Because while men are affirmed for their calling, women are not. And so I battled that a lot because I'd never foreseen that for myself. Like I wanted to be a medical doctor as a child, and my twin sister she wanted to be a pastor. I never saw that. I remember like maybe in my 20s, I thought, oh, I'll have a doctorate in ministry. I never even thought like that what I would do with that degree. I just was just, I'll have a doctorate in ministry or something like that. So when I went away, when I actually was called, I wasn't really in church. I had this experience with the church where I was just kind of not being in church. I wasn't coming to church. I would come, but I wasn't connected. I had people who I loved who were still a part of the church, and I would go to see them. Like I wouldn't show up for the sermon. I would show up when the sermon is finishing, and just get there in time and probably just say hey, and move on to the next thing. So when I decided to go to Oakwood, I didn't have a send off because I didn't have a church family that would send me off because I didn't have a connection with the church family in that way. I had just come out of my 20s. I had not too long finished working for the church, and I just had not liked the way that they had treated me. For example, I'd been there for about 2.5 years. Like the pastor who I was working under kept saying, "Hey, you need a raise," because I'm a hard worker, and a good worker, and he was just like, "You need a raise, you need a raise." But then when he encouraged me to request the raise, and I requested the raise, their way of handling me was, "Oh, well, let's do it the corporate way. We're gonna give you 30 cents on this raise. That's what we're gonna do." And what really bothered me was that I was so committed to the work. And so after that, I made a conscious decision to no longer be committed to the work. And I just gave them what they gave me. I set guidelines. I set rules. You won't call me after a certain time. You won't make any requests of me after a certain time. I just put some things in place. And I just thought, I was really hurt by that experience because I thought to myself, would they let their sister, because there are people on that board who had sisters, who had wives, who had mothers, would they have treated their person that way? You see, unlike other people, I never really had anybody to advocate for me in the Adventist church. I didn't have, my parents are not Adventist, my siblings are not Adventist, my aunties, my uncle, I don't have that. I've really been in this thing by myself. So unlike people who have family members in the church to advocate for them, I never had that. So when I had this experience, the next thing they came to me with was, we want you to concentrate. They sent somebody who I was very connected to. And it was just like, they were like, he came to me and he was like, how about you go back to school? How about you let go of this job and go back to school? And really, they just wanted somebody else for the job. It just, life happens. And that was okay because I was literally in my 20s at this time. And that was probably my first real job in the state of Georgia. But, and hey, it worked out. They gave me some money. I went to school. I started going to school. I started going to school to study English because I had no idea what I was going to do in school, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I had skills, but I had no one to mentor me and help me to hone in on those skills and what they are and guide my path. So I had to figure it on my own. Anyway, thank God for, like Sister Lindsay, who I mean, like, she just said to me one day when I was outside the church, "You're really good with the young people. You should consider going to Oakwood to study to become a minister." And that was what I took. That was what I took. And when I said yes to that, I kept questioning, and I would ask God over and over, God, is this the road you're leading me on? This is where you want me to go? And it was always a yes. There was always a yes. I grew up in a pastoral home. My dad was a pastor. My grandfather was a pastor. My uncle was a pastor. My mom's brother. So my mom's dad was a pastor. My father was a pastor. My mom's brother was a pastor. And so I grew up going to church every single week. When I didn't go to my dad's church. I went to my grandfather's church. When I didn't go to my grandfather's church, I went to a church that was not too far from us. So I grew up in church. But my experience with church has been hurtful in the way that they deal with situations at times. When I was a teenager, I was in a church where you couldn't wear jewelry, you couldn't wear pants, you couldn't process your hair. I think actually I grew up in that as a child, and then when I became a teenager and moved to America, that was the thing. I could not wear pants, and so I was taken off the choir for wearing pants. And after that, it was just like after that it just started to struggle. And then I became an Adventist when I was 20. And thank God I met some good people there, but I never really felt like I had a home in a sense. Thank God for Steve, for Cheyenne, for Sharnette, for Denise George, for even the Frasers, Merle, Auntie Merle, and Uncle Ruthven. Just a few people who really kind of like allowed me to come into their home and be a part of it. And I'm sorry if I'm missing anybody. It's not my intention. But people who allowed me to be a part of it, because sometimes, Sister Fraser would cook and bring food or cook and share. And because I didn't have anybody. I didn't have an Adventist family. I was going to church, and my mom was against it. I was getting beat up verbally every single Saturday morning and being told that I was in a cult. And I was like 20, 21, 22. I had chosen to follow God through the path of Adventism. And I had no family in that, none. So then here again, I had to figure it out on my own. And I had bad experiences there. People lied on me. They told people that I had an incurable disease that I never ever had. They told people whose son were interested in me to not date me because of such and such. I had a child when I came in. It's taboo. Everybody can hoe around in the Adventist church or just in churches, period. But if you have a kid, you're considered a hoe. You're impure. And, that was not my story in no whatsoever. Yet, it's that taboo, that thing where people just assume to know you based on whatever. So I wasn't always treated with that care and that respect in the church spaces. And then my mother's own trauma that she had in her father's church, where she was like, they would preach on them and stuff, and she would tell us that all the time. So I think it gave me that negative feeling when it came to church, yet I wanted to serve God. I've always been a person who wanted to live for God and wanted to serve God since I was a child. And so I'm just thinking this morning as I'm reading, I'm in my journal, and I'm talking to God about just what it is. We're having a conversation about things, and this comes up